let's go make this quilted trick-or-treat bag. But first, always remember to share this so it was saved to your profile and you can find it when you're looking for it again later. Missouri Star Quilt Company is giving you a free download to this trick-or-treat bag. The link to the download is in the caption along with the fabrics that we're going to use today. Now, it says that it is a pattern for 5-inch squares right here. So I know that I need 5-inch squares. Let's see what our instructions say. Select 21 squares from the package. When you buy a package of 5-inch squares, there's 42 total. So you're going to use half of those for this bag. Select 21 and make 3 rows of 7. Okay, that's easy. I'm using the Spooky Stitches fabric by Maywood Studio that Missouri Star Quilt Company sent us. And just like y'all, the hardest part to me is deciding where the fabric goes. So what you're going to do is lay your fabrics out 3 across and 7 down.
I want to know what your little people are going to be for Halloween. Olive and Olivia are going to be scarecrows because they're adorable, super easy, and the little ladies will love them. But I want to know what y'all are going to be because y'all might have better ideas than me.
I've lined mine up 3 across, 7 down. I'm going to pick them up and put them in a pile. Now I've got 3 clips. I'm going to clip that to the very top piece of fabric that I'm sewing. I'm going to start with my first row. I'm going to pick my first piece of fabric up and lay it pretty side down to my second piece of fabric that's pretty side up. So they're pretty side to pretty side. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when I start and when I stop because my grandma said so. And after I do that, I'm going to open it up and sew the next one and the next one and the next one. After I sew this, when I open it up, I'm going to know this is the top of my row because I have the clip on there. But if you have a different system you want to use, that's what I want you to do.
We almost were a toothless scarecrow for Halloween. Olivia took a tumble yesterday, face planted on the floor, shifted her tooth, humongous lip, her tooth is bleeding. I take a picture, send it to the dentist FaceTimes, looks at her and says, how loose is it? And I said, I don't know, I didn't wiggle it because I didn't want to make it worse. And he said, well, the damage is already done. Just bring her in the morning, and if it's dangling, I may have to take it out prematurely. But it's a baby tooth, so she'll get another one. He said, give her some Tylenol and let her have a popsicle. Y'all, she was so excited. All she could talk about was the tooth fairy last night. And then my sweet Olive said, Mommy, I think my tooth is loose. Can you check it too? But I'm happy to report the dentist appointment went well this morning. For now, all of our scarecrows will have all of their teeth. Doctor said it's rock solid, but it may die in a year or 2. But in a year or 2, she'll be 5 or 6. And that'll be okay. We'll be getting new teeth soon. But if I'm not careful, I'm going to see Olive and Olivia trying to pull each other's teeth. They were so excited about the tooth fairy.
We've sewn them, now we're going to iron them. We've talked about my ironing situation. Heat resistant pad, wool mat, both from Walmart. And this snazzy Oliso iron that Missouri Star Quilt Company sent us. And it's my new favorite, I have to tell y'all. I'm not ironing my seams open or even to one side. I just want them to be reasonably flat. And if you don't want to iron them at all, no judgment here. I'm going to iron mine, but I did plenty of sewing before I started ironing. So we are not judging anybody over here. After we've got them ironed, then we're going to put our bag together. Now, I have my clips at the top, so I know this is the top of my bag. I'm gonna lay it back out, make sure this is what I want it to look like, and then I'm gonna pick it up. Pretty side to pretty side. I'm gonna put one on top of the other, and I'm gonna sew right here. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam. Now, we want our seams to match, okay? So make sure your seams match as you get to them. We're not worried about nesting them. If you want to nest, I want you to, and that just simply means this one, for instance, is not nested. But if you were nesting it, your seams would go in opposite directions. If you want to nest it, I want you to. I'm not nesting mine, but I do want your seams to match. Pinch it, pleat it, pull it, whatever you got to do to get it there. But I do want your seams to match. And don't forget to backstitch when you start and when you stop, because my grandma said so.
And I can laugh about the scarecrow who almost didn't have any teeth today, but last night it was traumatic. I'm pretty sure I was close to a full-on panic attack. And we were going to a pool party at her friend's. She was just playing while we were waiting on time to leave. So she stands up, all bloody, lips swollen, and says, can I still go to the party? And I felt so sorry for her. I was thinking, yes, you can still go to the party. And if we didn't have a party to go to, I would throw you a party.
We've sewn all of our pieces together. Now we're going to iron it. You just want it to be reasonably flat because the next thing we're going to do is quilt it. Now there's a whole bunch of different ways you can quilt it. You can quilt it in straight lines and a diagonal. You can stitch in the ditch, which is where you just stitch right in this seam that's already there. but you quilt it any way you want to. Now I'm going to use some cotton batting to put on top of mine, but you can use whatever kind of batting you like. Our instructions say to cut a piece of batting that's 4 inches wider and 4 inches longer than our piece of fabric. So that's what I've done, but I didn't measure it. I just eyeballed it. It's close enough. You do want it to be wider because oftentimes when you're quilting, your fabric will shift a little bit and you want to be sure that it doesn't shift off of your batting. Now, if you wanted to make this and you didn't want to quilt it, just skip this step. I'm not going to pin mine, but if you want to pin yours, I want you to. I'm going to sew down both sides of this seam and both sides of this seam with a straight stitch. I'm just going to use the seam as my guide so that my stitch is straight all the way down. And I'm just going to do these two sides of each seam, but you quilt it however you want to.
My grandmother taught me how to sew, and she married young and had 4 kids, so she sewed out of necessity. And her sewing was more utility style. And that's what I'm passing along to y'all. I'm just telling y'all what she told me. If I were at home and I were making this trick-or-treat bag and I didn't have any cotton batting, I would use whatever I had. Felt, fleece, flannel. And if I didn't have any of that, then I wouldn't use anything. I would just have the front piece and the lining of the bag. The felt, flannel, fleece, or batting only gives it a little puffiness, which is really sweet, but without that, it's just as cute as it can be, I promise.
Okay, I've quilted mine and you've quilted yours however you want to. Let's see what our instructions say to do next. Okay, it says to trim and square up. I'm not squaring mine up. I'm just going to trim it next to the fabric that I've sewn. Be careful not to cut your stitches because you know I'm the queen of that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't even really have to be pretty. It's going to be hidden inside your bag. These are my Amelia 8-inch scissors from Missouri Star Quilt Company. So sharp, so perfect, my favorites. Okay, we've trimmed it. Lay out the pieced rectangle on the lining fabric and cut a rectangle the same width and length. Same thing, just cut it next to the edge of your fabric so that you end up with 2 pieces that are the same size. Fold the pieced and quilted rectangle in half lengthwise with right sides facing, sew the side seams together. We're going to sew just like this down the sides. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop.
Why? Because my grandma said so. And every time I don't say because my grandma said so, one of y'all reminds me that I didn't say it and my heart almost bursts.
Okay, so we've done that. Our next set of instructions say, after the side seams are sewn, make boxed corners by pulling on one corner of the bag until a peak is formed, measuring 1 3/4 from the point of the peak and draw a straight line across. Sew on the drawn line, then trim the fabric away. Repeat for the other corner of the bag. Got a ruler. Put my hand in here to push this out. We're going to make a triangle just like this. We're going to measure down 1 3/4 and draw a mark. And then we're going to draw a line across it. We're going to sew that and then cut this excess off. We're going to do that to both corners.
Boxing your corners is really easy, and once you learn how to do it, you'll be boxing the corners of everything. But if this step intimidates you, just skip it. It'll be perfectly fine without boxed corners.
I drew my line, I've sewn across it, I've already cut this corner, now I'm going to snip this corner off. You want to snip about 1/4 inch away from the line that you drew. Our next set of instructions says fold the lining rectangle in half lengthwise with right sides facing. Sew the side seams together, leaving an opening of about 4 inches in one seam. So I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to draw a mark here and here. That's 4 inches, and I'm going to sew here and I'm going to sew here. And I'm going to sew all the way down this side. And then it says follow the directions above to box the corners. So we're going to do the same thing. Push them out, make them flat, draw a line. So on top of the line that we've drawn, cut the excess off.
You don't have to measure when you leave your marks. Just remember you have to pull your entire bag out of it. The front of the bag, if it's quilted, can be a little bulky. You have a handle, and then you've got to turn the lining right side out.
Okay, I've sewn the sides. I've left my hole. I'm going to put my fingers in here, push this out, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come down 1 3/4 inch, draw a line. I'm going to sew directly across this line that I've drawn, and then snip the corner off, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other corner.
Same thing I've already told you. Once you learn how to box corners, you'll be boxing the corners of everything. But if you don't want to box the corners, if you're new to this and this step is intimidating, just skip it. Your bag will be perfectly fine without boxed corners.
Okay, set the 2 pieces of the bag aside for now. Cut one 1.5 inch by 40 inch strip of lightweight batting. We'll do that in a minute. Cut one 5 inch by 40 inch fabric strip. Trim the selvages off and fold the strip in half lengthwise. Then open it up. Press both raw edges in about 1/2 inch towards the center crease. Easy enough. Okay, we've ironed it in half. Now we're going to open it up and iron it in half again. Our instructions say about 1/2 inch. Our instructions say open one of the folded edges and place the 1.5 inch strip of batting between the center of the strip and the fold. Fold the strip in half along the center pressed crease and stitch the strap closed by sewing 1/4 inch from the edge. You have your 1.5 inch strip of batting here. You're just going to fold it over. This is folded in and this is folded in. So we're going to fold it over and let it meet. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way down. And then it says, add 2 more lines of stitching by sewing 1/4 inch from the opposite side and then right down the center. So I'm going to sew a straight stitch 1/4 inch seam right here. Then I'm going to sew a straight stitch 1/4 inch seam right here. And then I'm going to sew a straight stitch all the way down the center. Seems easy enough.
Our instructions also say after you're finished sewing your handle to trim it down to the desired size. I left it at 40 inches, but y'all, it's really long. So when you're making yours, you probably do want to trim it.
Okay, this is what it looks like now. Let's put that to the side. Turn the body of the bag inside out. Place the strap inside. Center one end of the strap to the sewn seam allowance on one side of the bag and pin in place. Repeat for the other side, okay? It says pin, but we're going to use a couple of clips. So I'm opening my bag up so that it's the pretty side. You see the pretty side? And I'm going to lay my strap right there on top of the pretty side. And I'm going to clip that, centering it on the seam that you made. And then make sure that your handle isn't twisted. Now, you're going to do the same thing to the other side. Make sure you're clipping this to the pretty side, which is the finished side of the inside of your bag. You're going to set this down in here. Push your strap all the way in your bag. Turn the lining right side out. Drop it into the bag. Notice the right sides are facing each other. Align the side seam allowances. Pin in place through all 3 layers, lining, bag, and strap. Pin the lining to the bag in several more places. Start on a side seam and sew all the way around the top using a seam allowance a bit wider than 1/4 inch. So we have our lining inside out. You see the back side of it? Front of our bag right side out. We're going to put the front of the bag inside the lining, and that's going to have pretty sides facing pretty sides. And then we're going to clip it at these side seams. You want the side seam of your lining to match the side seam of the front of your bag. So what I have is side seam, strap, side seam, and I have it clipped together. And I'm going to sew all the way around the top of this. Straight stitch. Our instructions say a little wider than 1/4 inch.
And there's no secret to sewing this. Slow and steady. Lots of pins. Y'all know I'm not a pinner, but I do have a couple of clips on here to help me.
Reach into the bag and find the opening that was left in the side. There we go. This is our side seam. Pull the whole bag through the opening to turn it right side out. After turning it, whip stitch, which is hand stitch. We're not doing that. We're going to sew ours with our machine. Sew the opening in the lining closed and tuck it inside the bag. Top stitch around the top 1/4 inch from the edge to complete the bag. Okay, so we're going to take our hole that we just left and sew it shut. I intended to change my thread to orange, but then I thought no, because I want y'all to see the seams that I'm making. Now we're going to take our lining, shove it down inside our bag. Dun dun dun! Y'all, this is super cute. Now we're going to go back and we're going to stitch around the top of it 1/4 inch all the way around, and that's just going to make our lining stay in. But before I do that, I'm going to iron mine. Our pattern doesn't say to iron it, but I think it's just going to look better. But if you don't want to iron, nobody's judging you. Now I'm gonna go and sew all the way around the top of this bag, just with a straight stitch.
You're going to sew this like a top stitch as close to the edge as you're comfortable, but only sew as close as you're comfortable.
And that's it. Make sure you trim off all your threads. Nobody, not a single soul on the planet wants that gift you just gave them with threads hanging off of it. Dun dun dun! And here you have your precious trick-or-treat bag. Our pattern said to trim this to the desired length that you wanted. I left it the whole 40 inches, but if I were making it for my little ladies, I would definitely trim it. This is adorable. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher, and I would love for you to come sew with me.